is Bob Andelman, host of Mr. Media Radio, and this is one in a special series of Blog Talk radio shows celebrating the 20th anniversary of Wiley's For Dummies instructional books, recorded live on blogtalkradio.com. Joining me for this program is Mary Ewing-Mulligan, co-author of Wine for Dummies, French Wine for Dummies, Italian Wine for Dummies, and Wine Style. Stick around.
It's the world's best-selling reference series and has been enriching millions of lives by making knowledge accessible in a fun and easy way. Welcome to the Blog Talk Radio For Dummies show. The For Dummies series is celebrating 20 years of making everything easier. Join us as we visit with a variety of authors as they explain how they became involved with the series and what the For Dummies brand means to them. Welcome to For Dummies.
Mary Ewing-Mulligan has co-authored 6 wine books in the Wine for Dummies series, including 2 of her favorites, French Wine for Dummies and Italian Wine for Dummies, as well as the latest book, Wine Style. She's done all of these books with her partner, Ed McCarthy. They have taught hundreds of wine classes together and visited nearly every wine region in the world. Mary is president of International Wine Center, a New York City wine school that offers credentialed wine education for wine professionals and serious wine lovers. As U.S. Director of the Wine and Spirit Education Trust, the world's leading wine education organization, she works to make the courses she offers in New York available in more and more parts of the United States. She is also the long-standing wine columnist of the New York Daily News. Mary's most impressive credential is that she's the first female Master of Wine, that's an MW, in the United States, and one of only 22 MWs in North America. Mary also writes wine columns in Nation's Restaurant News and in Beverage Media, a trade publication. She is also a columnist for the online wine magazine, WineReviewOnline.com, and is accredited as a Certified Wine Educator. Mary, welcome.
Great to be here.
Delighted to have you. I got to ask you this right up top. Now, I'm not a wine drinker, but I have plenty of friends, obviously, as everyone does, who are. What is a foolproof bottle that makes a great gift for any occasion?
You know, it's a very tricky question because it's what everybody wants to know. When I run into people, they say, well, what's a good wine? What's a good wine that I should buy? And the fact is that wines are always changing. Styles in wine are always changing. There is fashion in wine. So these days, if you give someone a Pinot Noir, then that's cool. But if you give them a Merlot, it's not, you know. So it's hard to answer things in generalities like this with wine because wine is so differentiated as a topic. I would, in general, say a bottle of something with bubbles in it, whether that's an actual champagne, which would be ideal because no one would ever refuse a bottle of champagne, really. I don't know anyone who ever has. Or maybe a sparkling wine from California or a bottle of Prosecco. To some extent, it's a budget choice. But I think giving someone a bottle of something bubbly is just a little bit more special, or even, and you know, the fact is bubbly wines really go very well with food, too. I mean, even if you're in a dining situation, they sort of cross lines in terms of what you can have them with. They don't necessarily go perfectly with everything, but they go well enough with everything.
And something that's a little bubbly is going to make a good gift, because I guess sometimes, you know, you're bringing someone a gift. Maybe you're invited to dinner or something like that. You're not necessarily bringing the bottle as something to be opened now. It could be a gift for later, right?
Exactly. In fact, if you never know how the recipient is going to treat the bottle. What Ed McCarthy and I do, we always bring champagne when we go to people's homes, and if we want it opened then and there, which we usually do, we bring it chilled. And then we say, oh, it's already chilled. That's a little bit devious. But no, it's even if you just intend it to be a house gift for that person to have later, it's a lovely thing. Who doesn't want something bubbly for Sunday brunch or something like that, you know?
When you, I'm glad you brought this up. When you and Ed go to someone's home, Are they at all intimidated by your wine expertise, or could it be either that they're intimidated by it, or that they want to impress you by the opposite of that? They want to impress you with how smart they are?
Well, I think what happens is that most of us gravitate towards people who have the same interests as we do. So unless it's a situation where we're going into someone's home to meet their friends for the purpose of doing some kind of performance, almost, and that falls into the category of a type of work, a lovely work, but a type of work. Unless it's a situation like that, we're socializing with people who have the same interests we do, and some of them might prefer certain types of wine over other types of wine. We all have our little specialties. But no, we don't run into that situation that much. And, I think especially since having written Wine for Dummies, it was quite a while ago. We wrote it in 1995. But especially since we wrote Wine for Dummies, I think that everyone knows that we can come down to earth on the subject and deal with it in a straightforward way.
If you're relaxing this evening, just taking it easy, kicking back, it's just you and a bottle of wine, what bottle of wine is that likely to be?
It will probably be Italian. It will probably be red. It might very well be a Barbera from northern Italy, from Piedmont in the northwest. That's a grape variety that we like very much because it goes very well with lots of different foods. The wines tend to be not too heavy, have a nice freshness of fruity flavor to them. I would say that we drink Barbera. I don't want to say 2-to-1, but we drink Barbera more than we drink any other single type of wine.
It sounds like when you were introduced to that was a pretty key moment for you.
Well, we have dear friends who live in northwestern Italy and Piedmont, and they happen to be Barbera specialists. The winery is called Vietti, and we've been visiting them since the mid-'80s, and at least once a year, sometimes a couple of times a year, and it's very hard. Passion is contagious, and they have such a passion for making wines from this grape variety that it's really hard not to be consumed by the same passion.
Well, but there's a lot of wine in the world for someone with your expertise to settle in on that one as the one that you, in a quiet moment, would like to have. It obviously it's had a big impact.
Yeah, it has, and of course I couldn't say we drink it 2-to-1 over other wines because we drink so many wines and we need to taste and drink so many wines just to keep ourselves informed and fresh and current on the topic. We're drinking wines from all over the world. We're drinking inexpensive wines. We're drinking expensive wines. We're drinking young wines. We're drinking older wines from our own wine collection, and so I couldn't say that we drink Barbera even half the time, but if we counted what we drink, probably more of the bottles would be Barbera.
Well, speaking of the great and vast variety of wines and costs, what if I have a Four Seasons taste and a Walmart budget? Do you have any suggestions for that person?
Do you like red wine? Do you like white wine? Do you like dry wines? Do you like sweet wines? Do you like full-bodied wines? Do you like more delicate wines? You see the problem? It's very frustrating to me because I know that people want specific answers, and it's very difficult because I need to know more about what you like in order to be able to recommend a wine that you like, because it's something that you put in your mouth. It's something that you consume, and your taste is so individual. Anyone's taste is individual. I will say that these days it's a lucky time for wine drinkers because since the financial crisis, more expensive wines have been selling less expensively. And I think that you can get deals on great wines that you couldn't get before. Now, my deal is someone else's extravagance, maybe, but you can get $200 wines for conceivably $100, or you could get $50 wines for $30. There are lots of things being discounted. There are websites that are specializing in selling overstock of even fine wine, and it's a very lucky time for people who have highfalutin tastes and yet need to keep to a budget.
Sounds like it might be a good time to start building a wine cellar.
If you've got the cash. I think that lots of people have wine cellars and they don't even call them wine cellars. I mean, people have 24 bottles of wine in their dining room. People have some wine stashed in the bottom of their closets. Wine cellars just sort of happen. It's not very often that you go into it and you say, I'm going to build a wine cellar. I'm going to start a wine collection. You just get a bottle here, you get a bottle there. You're intrigued by something. You go, you're in a wine shop and someone says, oh, you've got to try this, and you say, okay, I'm going to try it, and then you really like it. You buy 3 more bottles to have for the future. In the meantime, you're drinking something else. It just, wine collections just happen, and this would not be a bad time to start having one happen on you.
I heard a story. I can't remember if I read this past week or someone told me this story, but Sammy Hagar, a rock star from many years on now, apparently early in his career, which we may be talking in the late 70s, early 80s, had a rider written into his contracts when he performed that the promoters had to supply him with some specific fine wines. It seemed like an unlikely, perhaps to some people, an unlikely wines. I thought that was a great story.
Yeah, unfortunately I missed hearing a little bit of it because the line sort of went out on me.
Oh.
But it is a wonderful story. I can imagine where it was going as you were saying it. Janis Joplin had to have her Southern Comfort, and so tastes are personal. I mean, someone's Lafite is someone else's Southern Comfort. I'm
guessing someone like yourself would have quite a collection of wines?
Yes, we do. We have about Ed and I together because he's a little bit more the collector than I am, and I don't know why. Well, I know why that is because he started collecting before I met him, and we together have over 3,000 bottles of wine. Which is just a lot. It's more than we can drink, to tell you the truth.
My God! Yeah, I was just going to say, are you sipping on any wine at the moment?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I have a cup of tea in front of me.
Oh, okay. Well, I have a bottle of Mellow Yellow, so we're both teetotaling at the moment. Do you have to when you sample and drink as much wine as you do you have to set rules for yourself in terms of how much you'll drink, how much you'll sample, when during the day you'll start, that type of thing? What you have to do is you have to be vigilant because one's reaction to wine can be very dependent on your physical health, how tired you are on a particular day, etc. Of course, when we taste professionally, we don't swallow, we spit. Even so, there can be an effect of the wine. One of the things that I do personally is I try not to try too hard. I try to trust my first impressions because if you take a wine and you taste it again and again, spitting, but trying to grasp that nuance, that sort of ineffable character of it, sometimes, first of all, you might be looking for something that's just not there because there are plenty of just ordinary, regular wines.
that are not nuanced, and then you work too hard and you get tired and the alcohol goes to your head. So it's a question of constant vigilance, of knowing what kinds of situations are going to work for you. I find, I mean, in our wine school for years and years, we would make a point of giving out printed literature about the wines to people who were coming to taste, even if it was just a casual walk-around tasting, to explain the difference between this and that and the other thing, because we feel that by bringing in that serious intellectual element to the tasting experience, it keeps you on track. You don't degrade into, wow, that's good, let me have another taste of that, you know. It's constant vigilance, you know.
Well, Mary, let's take a quick break. This is Bob Andelman, host of Mr. Media Radio, and you're listening to a special Blog Talk Radio interview with Mary Ewing-Mulligan, co-author of Wine for Dummies, French Wine for Dummies, Italian Wine for Dummies, and Wine Style. And we'll be right back.
The world's best-selling reference series has turned 20. For Dummies, the Black and Yellow book series has sold more than 200 million books since 1991 and has become not just a bookstore staple, but a practical lifesaver for everyone. Now join them on Blog Talk Radio. Hear a variety of authors involved with the series discuss their areas of expertise, from wine to software, finance, eBay, and even Dr. Ruth and Sex for Dummies. Visit the For Dummies channel, blogtalkradio.com/For Dummies.
Hello, this is Bob Andelman, host of Mr. Media Radio, and you're listening to a special Blog Talk Radio interview with Mary Ewing-Mulligan, co-author of Wine for Dummies, French Wine for Dummies, Italian Wine for Dummies, and Wine Style. Mary, I have to ask you, my only experience as a real teetotaler, my only real experience with wine tasting was a couple years ago. My wife and I were up in the Niagara-on-the-Lake area of Canada, and I do like the taste of the ice wines, and I thought there were two things I wanted to ask you. One is, I thought it was interesting that they could taste so different. Someone who didn't have the experience, I thought, well, they'll all taste the same, but you could definitely taste the difference. And the real question, though, is, do wine professionals like yourself have any respect for ice wines, or are they more like a novelty type of item within the wine community?
Oh, no. Definitely we have respect for ice wines. It's a trick of nature that they even exist. Now, of course, one can make ice wines by freezing grapes, but anything that you can do in wine, you can be done in a cheaper way. But a real ice wine that occurs when the grapes happen to get frozen on the vine and the grapes are crushed while the ice is still solid, so that some of the water in the grapes has frozen, and it concentrates all the flavor, all the richness, and all the rest of the liquid of the grapes. It's a marvelous thing. It's absolutely fascinating. No, we have great respect for it. Absolutely.
Oh, I feel much better. I feel much more sophisticated all of a sudden.
Well, that's very important in wine. It's very important that you not necessarily that you feel sophisticated, but that you feel okay about the kind of wine that you like. And I think that this is one of our most important messages in wine, because you can take wine in so many directions. You can take it into the geekier than thou direction, and it's boring and it's useless to most people. The important thing is that you find something that you like, that you enjoy it, and you feel okay about liking it.
Well, let me bring this back around to you. Can you tell us a little bit about the regions that you cover and some highlights of each?
Oh, my goodness. There are so many countries and regions in the world that make wine in the latest version of Wine for Dummies that we did, which was about 3 years ago, we felt the need to increase coverage on Greece, for example, because Greek wines are coming on strong. They're very interesting. They're complex for people. They're complicated for people because the grape varieties generally are not grape varieties that we know from that we know internationally elsewhere in the world. They're just grape varieties that are native to Greece and pretty much limited to Greece. And we felt that we really wanted to turn people onto these wines, but at the same time the wines really needed some kind of simplifying. So that's one of the regions that we covered most recently. But the wines of Italy, the wines of France, the wines of Spain, the wines of Germany, the wines of Austria. I love Austrian wines. In this country, Oregon and Washington and California, but also New York. There are other wines in America, of course, but there's only so far that you can go because, books have a limit to how big they can be. South America, Argentina, Chile, Australia, New Zealand, in the Southern Hemisphere. I'm getting excited thinking about it because there are so many places in the world where very, very wonderful wines are produced, and I probably have left out something major that someone's going to call me on.
Now, when you hear of a new place, maybe in the United States, that's producing wine, do you have a natural and instant skepticism about certain parts of the country because of the climate, the soil, that type of thing, or are you open to anything?
A little of both. I don't necessarily, first of all, there's the issue of local wines, and I think that if I were living in some place in this country that makes wines that are not nationally recognized, famous wines, I would still enjoy them if I lived there because they're my local wines, all right? And I think that that's a very valid reason. And I think that the way, they say that America is not a wine culture yet, I very much believe that wine has not penetrated very much into our habits, our eating habits. Lots of Americans don't drink wine at all. The way that will happen is through local wineries and local wines, so that, I don't drink, if someone's going to say, I don't drink wine, but my neighbor made this, so I'm tasting it, that kind of thing. I do have a little skepticism to start that it will be, not that it won't be a decent wine, but that such a wine might not be to my liking or might not be comparatively good compared to something out of California or the West Coast, for example. But I can very easily be turned around. I remember the first time I had a Riesling from Michigan, and I was bowled over. It was, that factor, that little bit of skepticism can work to convert you all the more enthusiastically because your starting point is, well, I'm not sure about this, and then, oh, whoa, wait a minute here. This is very good. And so I become a big fan of white wines from Michigan, for example. So, yeah, a little skepticism, but a readiness to be converted.
Okay. Well, of course, we're here today talking because this is the 20th anniversary of Wiley's For Dummies series. I want to ask you this, and I don't know if this is one question or two questions. How did you get involved in the series, and how did you connect with your co-author on so many of these books, Ed McCarthy?
Well, Ed and I are married, so that's an easy one.
I didn't know that.
Yes. And we met at a wine tasting, so we always had that in common from day one, and we were collecting wines together and entertaining together and all that kind of thing. And so when the opportunity came up, it was just very logical that two of us would write the book rather than one. I was actually the one who came up with the idea for a Dummies book on wine, and I felt that there was really a need to simplify wines, but I didn't know about the Dummies books, or it was very early days, and I I knew that there was this brand, but I had never read a dummies book until, quite by accident, I found myself reading Max for Dummies and developed such a respect for the authority with which they were written and the respect for the reader that the book conveyed. So it was a tone that said, listen, I know what I'm talking about, and I'm going to share it with you so that you know what you're talking about too. And I really thought that that was just the tone to use to handle the very intimidating topic of wine. I mean, as complex as computers and as intimidating to people and all of that. And so when I read Max for Dummies, that was when the light bulb went off, and I said, we need to write Wine for Dummies, even though at that moment in time there were no non-computer dummies books yet. They didn't exist.
And how has writing these books kind of changed the orbit or the tilt of your career over the years? It's been wonderful. Emotionally, it's very, very satisfying because we meet so many people all the time who are now, professionals in the wine business. For example, we might attend a wine tasting and someone is a representative of the company that made the wine and is standing behind the table and is there in an authority position to tell us about that wine. And then after we listen to them and we taste the wine, then they say, by the way, everything I learned from Wine for Dummies, and that was the first wine book that they read. I can't tell you how many people have said that. I read Wine for Dummies and it launched me into my career. So we're very proud of that and emotionally very, very satisfied by that. For me personally, being a master of wine, it's a little bit of a double-edged sword because what am I? Am I a true expert in the world of wine, or am I someone who can talk to people in a populist way about wine? And it's sort of, the world sort of wants to put you into one category or the other, and so that's just speaking for myself. You must have quite a following after all these years.
I hope we
books.
Do.
Yeah.
I will tell you that the books keep selling, and we keep doing updates, and so that tells us that people are still buying them, and so that's terrific.
Well, last question before we run out of time. Do you have any general thoughts on being part of the series and this being the 20th anniversary of the For Dummies series?
I think it is fit that this is the 20th anniversary. It's a good and proper thing that the series has survived. I think it has done so much good for people. It has opened so many possibilities for people, and I say that as a reader myself, and not just as a writer of some of the titles. If I want to know about jazz, I think a good place to start is I would pick up Jazz for Dummies. I mean, almost anything that I might want to know about, a good place to start is to pick up that book and to get some, on-the-ground knowledge. It's a wonderful series. I'm just immensely proud to be part of it.
Well, folks, you can learn more about the 20th anniversary of Wiley's For Dummies book series at www.dummies.com. Mary, do you and Ed have a website of your own or one that you want to send people to for more information?
No, unfortunately we don't. My school is internationalwinecenter.com. But no, we're, I guess, Luddites in that sense.
Okay. Well, you know something about something, though. That's pretty clear. Mary Ewing-Mulligan, co-author with her husband, Ed McCarthy, of Wine for Dummies and several other Dummies books. Thank you so much for joining us on this special Blog Talk Radio report celebrating the 20th anniversary of Wiley's Dummies instructional books.
It's been a pleasure, Bob. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And folks, if you'd like to sample Mr. Media Radio, please give our regular show a listen at www.blogtalkradio.com/Mr. Media, MR Media. And this is Bob Andelman, and thanks for listening, everybody.
You've been listening to For Dummies, a celebration of 20 years of making everything easier. Join us next time as we visit with a variety of authors as they explain how they became involved with the series and what the For Dummies brand means to them. And visit us online at blogtalkradio.com/4dummies.